Hey, it's Phil. It's me. I'm back. I'm back. Did you hear that beginning? I don't know. Do I even remember how to do these things? It's been a while. It's been a while, guys, since I've talked Star Trek. Before I forget, don't like and subscribe to the channel so that you will get some updates when new videos come out. My friend Pete and I were doing a great Star Trek Deep Space Nine rewatch and review, but then life gets crazy as it usually does here in Brazil. And so we took a little bit of a break. We have been doing the Brazil Expat Journal. If you want to know a little bit about that crazy life here in Brazil, check out those videos. If not, well, we'll get back to Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and hopefully I'll be keeping up with Star Trek Strange New Worlds because I did do the Star Trek Strange New Worlds weekly podcast. I don't know if I can keep it up weekly, so maybe I'll just end up doing a season review like I'm about to do now about Star Trek Picard Season 3. The good and the bad. And yes, there were bad things about Star Trek Picard Season 3. It seems like a lot of the folks who were haters, I mean, they're nice people. Some of them were nice people, so I don't want to call them haters. But let's say they weren't fans of New Trek. They seem to be like almost like glossy-eyed, looking at everything. Like, oh my God, it's so amazing. They'll throw out a well, it's not perfect every once in a while, but generally, it seems like they got the uh, Star Trek Picard season 3 blinders on, and they are really, really, really pushing how amazing it is, and it was really good. I mean, I just want to kind of balance it out a little bit. Because Terry Matalas did do a really good job at getting this show back on the road, but in closing it out. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to break down. We're not break down. I'm just going to go through the episodes very, very quickly and just give you my general feelings about them and then give a seasonal review and then tell you what I liked and what I didn't like. And then at the end, kind of give a character breakdown and let you know how I felt about some of the new and old characters. So the season began with the Next Generation and Disengage, and I'm kind of putting two together because one, yes, it's one long story, but the season was kind of split up in almost like a first, second, and third act, which in a way, I don't even think it was like a first, second, and third act. It was like a first story, a second story, and a third story. And I think that's a little bit of what created some problems for me towards the end of the season. But it begins with Beverly Crusher asking for some help. She's out there, all renegade and stuff. Reminded me a little bit of Seven of Nine when she showed up in Star Trek Picard season 1. And she connects with Picard, and we find out she has a son, and they're being chased. And so Picard reaches out to Riker, and they try to go on a rescue mission without anybody knowing. And they do this by getting on the Titan, which is now being commanded by our friend Captain Shaw. And Seven of Nine is his first officer. Guys, pretty cool opening. I thought that it definitely was playing those nostalgia vibes very heavy, but I'm into nostalgia vibes. I know there's a lot of folks out there who don't like it, and I'm like, why not? I mean, if you can give me like a scenery, a character, or even just something on the wall that reminds me of those good times that we used to have, I'm down for it. I mean, you can't do it all the time, and you can't have your whole show ride on it. And I don't think this season of Star Trek Picard rode on nostalgia. It definitely hit it hard. But think about it. It's the very last voyage that we're going to see with this cast. I mean, it's going to be practically an impossible mission to get them all back again, and have a super engrossing, interesting space adventure. So this is our farewell. So all the member berries, as they're called out there, give them to me. I don't care. Okay. And it worked well in this one. It worked better than even some of the Easter eggs and throwbacks that they did in the earlier seasons of Picard. I'm thinking of last season when they traveled back in time and they had a scene very similar from Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. It's okay, but it doesn't add anything to the story. So I don't mind these member berries if one, they're adding to the story, or two, it's just something on the side there that you saw, as we later when we get to Daystrom Station, you see Kirk's body and the tribble and stuff like that in this space museum. It works for me, okay? But I know some people were turned off by the first episode because they were like, this is too much, like nostalgia points. Even they were complaining even about the lettering in the of the title of the episode. But I liked it. It's the next generation and then disengage, so it got me into it, which is I think what we need to do. Problem is, every Star Trek Picard season has got me into it right from the get-go. Maybe Picard season 1, not so much. I really did enjoy the first 2 episodes, maybe even 3 of Star Trek Picard season 2 until they got back in time. And then that was a mess. Season 2 was a mess. But the beginning I thought was cool. The pacing was up. It got me interested. I was curious as to what was going to happen. Same thing here. And we find out very quickly that Jack Crusher, okay, who is Picard's biological son that he hasn't seen in a very long time, is being chased. And the ship that's chasing him is called the Shrike. And there's a captain on this ship called Vadic. And Vadic is going to be our first person here that we're going to talk about. There she is. And I thought she was so cool, man. One of the best villains Star Trek has had in a long time. She got to camp it up a little bit. But then what I liked is that she also had this sinister side. It seemed like she had her persona for when she's ready to attack you and just be a menace to you. And then her actual self, which is a little bit more pensive, a little bit more frustrating, I thought was very well played, very well acted. And she was the hit of the season, I think, for the first part of the season. Everybody was talking about Vadic. What is she? Is she a changeling or not? And, guys, by the way, spoilers, season's over. Yes, she is a changeling, but not like we've seen them before. In fact, she cuts off a piece of her hand and his face talks to her. And we will get into, my feelings on that later because that's one of the things I wasn't necessarily happy with. But up to this point, I'm down. I'm even down with the fact that we have Deep Space Nine villains in a TNG show. I know Steve Shives, which I really love Steve, but he hated. We didn't hate, but he wasn't super fan of Star Trek season 3. And one of his reasons, which was kind of weird, but okay, I can sort of see what he's saying, is that, DS9 has its villains and its storylines, even though it's all in the same universe. But why are we having DS9 villains on the TNG show? Because TNG has its own history and its own villains and its own kind of trajectory. It's kind of weird. Why are we borrowing? I get the counter point of view, which is kind of more where I am, which is, hey, it's all set in the same universe. And what we couldn't do back in the 90s, well, they did it every once in a while. Always have a couple crossovers, but like a mega crossover. Let's get the villains involved. We had a couple one-offs, DS9 to TNG. I believe some TNG to Voyager, if I'm not mistaken. Wasn't Riker? Riker's everywhere, but I think there's a TNG cameo in Voyager, and Janeway does show up at the start of First Contact, so they're all in there, so I think it's kind of cool if we can mix all these different realities, all these different worlds together. Guys, the show continues to get really good up to episode 4, okay, and with a lot of good character moments, which I think is really, really the crux of this season. Is it built on the characters? It wasn't just plot driven, and well, maybe it could have been a little bit more plot driven by the end. That's all I'll say. I'll save my thoughts for the end at the end. But I liked it. I liked that Shaw wasn't this warm guy. He really didn't trust Picard. He was suffering from some PTSD. The Titan wasn't this ship that was built to go out on some wild missions. It was more of an exploratory vessel. And he's like, I don't want to deal with this shit, But as things like this usually go, he got sucked into it, and eventually, was all in and was helping, the TNG cast, whoever was still in the ship by this time. I think it was only Crusher and Riker and Picard, and then you have Seven of Nine, and then we get to meet a lot of cool characters like LaForge's daughter and stuff like that. Guys, just a blanket statement for all the extras in this show. Amazing, really good job with them, especially with the writing. One of the biggest issues that a lot of people had with Star Trek Discovery, including myself, and I'm a fan of Star Trek Discovery, is how little we know about all these the bridge crew. They every once in a while they'll throw a little, a couple breadcrumbs at us. I think there was this kind of cool episode where Burnham and Oyo, I can't say her name. I can't even remember the names of the characters. Oyo, I think is her nickname, the black girl with the dreads or the braids. It was cool. It was nice to see her do stuff. Detmer, I believe, is the girl with the eyes. She had a couple things to do every once in a while. So it's cool when they try to put them out there. They just don't do it enough, and they don't do it very well. Okay? But anyway, enough on Discovery. Let's go back to here. Just a comparison. Even though the bridge crew didn't have a lot to do, but when they did, it was impactful and memorable and just really great writing. I mean, for me, so far, this has been nines to close to tens up to this point. Episode 5, by the way, so I'm kind of moving along. We got 17 seconds. We got the no-win scenario. They get stuck in this nebula for the longest time. And I was digging that. I was actually digging the stuff in the nebula. It's just that looking back with how the season ended, I'm not sure I would have spent that much time in the nebula. And I'm kind of stealing a little bit these same thoughts as the boys from Shark Yards, because they pretty much said the same. They're like, well, the season ended up taking a left turn on the last 2 episodes. Why did we spend that much time in the nebula and not just, instead of having 2 episodes with the main villain, bring it up to like 4 or 5 episodes? I kind of tend to agree after the season's over. Season 5 was a very nice episode where Rolaren gets some closure, and we understand a little bit more about the plot, and realizing that the changelings have evolved to evade body scanners, and they've taken over Starfleet, and there's something going on with this Frontier Day because all of the ships in Starfleet are going to be there. What's going on? I thought it'd be something a little bit more interesting than what it was, but okay, whatever. By the way, so far I haven't mentioned Worf and Raffi, because the Worf and Raffi stuff, I thought it was nice, but it wasn't like very impactful. I mean, Worf, it's always great to see Worf. I'm so glad that they got his makeup right. He became the comedic, what do you call it? The comic relief of this season. I don't know if I like that. Like in the beginning, I do, and I get it that Worf is funny. Worf has always been funny since almost the beginning. Once Michael Dorn kind of understood this character, where he knew how to play it straight, but at the same time, him playing it straight is what the joke was. Similar to that. I almost said Data. But Data is way more in your face. You understand? Okay, it's an android. He's gonna have awkward moments, but Worf is so right and so trying to always be, like on everything and understand what's happening around him, and he can still be kind of goofy. But I think it takes a little bit away from Worf's character if you just make him comic relief all the time. He started out kind of badass in this season, and then in the end didn't really dig it, but we'll get to that. I promise. I hope I remember. So then we get into the Bounty 6, where Worf and Raffi do join the crew of the Titan, okay? And the Titan is able to escape from Rafi after doing an amazing Riker maneuver where Riker tractor beams like a rock or an asteroid at the Shrike, which was really, really cool. That was fucking awesome. Um, but then we start to get more of our cast, show up. Geordie LaForge is the Commodore in charge of the Starfleet Museum, okay? And he's working on a secret project there. I wonder what that is. And Picard goes to him to go get some help. Meanwhile, I believe it was Riker, Rafi, and Worf. They go to what is it? They go to the Daystrom Station, okay, which is different than Daystrom Institute. Okay, this is a station that's got a lot of weird, what do you call it? Weird, almost like Section 20, Section 31 type stuff going on over there. Okay, and they're trying to find out what the connection is because we had discovered that our friend Vatic had stolen this portal device, and there's this really awesome scene either in the first or second episode where the portal device just absolutely destroys everything. I think I have it here in my slides. There it is. The portal device demolished this right here. It was pretty wild. What happened? And the portal device was actually beating the Titans' butt too when they were stuck in that nebula, because they were trying to warp out and then they would warp right back in. It was really cool. This device, and we'll get to that. I think more could have been done with it, but we find out that was just a distraction. And really, the changelings were trying to get into Daystrom to steal something. Well, they break into Daystrom. They find out that the person keeping Daystrom operational is Data, or a sort of Data. Okay, it's this version of him that's been, given a synthetic type body, almost similar to what Picard has, and inside this body you have the memories or the personalities of Lord, Data, and what's her name? Lar, I forgot his daughter's name. And soon, the same one that had helped our friend Picard was working on this before he died. He didn't get to finish. So it's not all right, especially because we got a little bit of lore in there. And why would he put lore in there? We know lore is a nutcase. So I don't get that, but whatever. Gives us a kind of a cool little scene a little bit after. And then it just becomes ship scenes, ship scenes. People talk a lot about how this season of Star Trek Picard had a lot of battle episodes to save on the budget, and they made it very submarine battle-like. It was similar to Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and even to an extent, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, where they spend a lot of time on the bridge. That means, budget goes down. Perfect. And we are trying to find out this mystery. We get another little callback with Tuvok appearing, but it's not really Tuvok. It's a changeling. And Riker gets caught, when they're trying to escape the Daystrom station. They are able to get Data's body because he's the one that has the information, but Riker gets captured. And we find out that on the ship is Troy, on the Shrike. Troy is there. So they're reunited. We got ourselves some Troy. And we're trying to get information out of Data. And Data pretty much, says, hey, what they stole from Daystrom Institute was Picard's original body. And yes, that whole episode, guys, with the Space Museum, and you see all the old school ships. You see Voyager, which I love to see. You see the classic Enterprises. I love, Enterprise A and whatever. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Love that. Full of nostalgia, but for good reason. And we get a lot of character building moments. And I haven't talked a lot about him. We start to see that Jack's got some weird stuff going with him. He can control people's minds. He sees this red door that he's trying to get to. What's going on with Jack? And a lot of people had theories that it was the Pa Wraiths or Something's calling to him, and maybe it could have been the Borg too. Because they did say come home, come to us, very plural, very we are your family type stuff. Kind of figured it was the Borg, but I personally didn't want it to be the Borg. But we find out that it definitely is them, okay? Because um, Vedic catches up to the Titan. She beams on board. Now, this is a little convoluted because she could have easily found out where Jack was, but it took her forever to find him. I think this is just one of those dramatic tropes of like, let the villain, twirl their mustache and make monologues because they can. But it took way too long. But when when she eventually sees Jack, she's about to tell us what his deal is and why he's so important. She gets cut off because it was all a ploy to, you know, send her out of the ship, by opening, the bridge. And she goes out into space and gets frozen. And that's it for Vatic. There's Vatic here, all frozen in space. Where is she? There's Vatic. Fucking solid's one of the best lines ever. So that was it. I was kind of shocked. I was like, that's it? I thought it was kind of easy, to be honest. I thought it was an easy kill for Vatic. But whatever. We move on. Troy gets onto the ship, onto the Titan, and now the whole cast is together. Again, guys, I'm not going into details of everything that happens in these episodes because you've seen them. If I were doing weekly videos, we would break down all these episodes. But there was a little bit of a lull there in the middle. A lot of setting things up, character moments. Were you here? Were you there? Did you think about this? Could it be that? But nothing really for me moving the plot forward. It's just getting everybody together. But then, boom, it ends up that Jack is connected to the Borg. And we find out that disease that Picard had, which was called, let's see here, guys. I'm looking at some notes here. And I completely forgot you all watch the series. You know exactly what I'm talking about. He's got some thing in his head, but it ends up that no, that disease isn't really a disease. What it was is bits of the Locutus. When Picard was assimilated by the Borg, some of that stuff stayed in his head, and so he passed it on to. Oh, excuse me, guys. It is 12:53 a.m. here in Brazil. I meant to do this video around 7 or 8 o'clock, but I just didn't get around to it. Anyway, Euramatic syndrome, whatever the hell he had. But anyway, he passed this on to Jack. Therefore, the Borg are calling Jack back in order to become part of the collective and be like Locutus Part 2, but his name is Vox. And how are we going to save the day? Well, we need a ship that's not going to be controlled by the Borg, because what's happening is this. When all the ships are gathered there in Frontier Day, the Borg are able to telepathically, I'm not quite sure how this all worked, but apparently telepathically they can control everybody. Oh, was it through the transporters? I think it was through the transporters. I forgot. By the way, when I forget stuff, it's probably because it didn't grip me as much. In episode 9 and 10 did not grip me. I mean, it was kind of clear that it was the Borg, but I'm like, again? Because we had the Borg in season 1. Again, don't ask me what the hell that storyline was about. I remember 7 of 9 was connected to the Borg cube at some point, and she kind of controlled it. Was she going to become she could have been like a queen? I don't know. I know it crashed on the ship with the synths. I know there's some Romulans in there that wanted something in there. I know he was in there and then he died. Don't ask me. Season 1 is a blur. At least that part of season 1 with damn Borg. And then season 2, more Borg. I mean, at least the Borg Queen was cool. I'm not gonna hate completely on season two. I did like the Borg Queen. Rest in peace to the actress who played the Borg Queen there. Um, and then we got the Gerardi Borg, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And actually, I was kind of pissed that like something was coming through some portal at the end of season two of Star Trek Picard, and it was just forgotten. But there was a whole lot of retconning in season three. They were like, you know what, that was some BS, including this aromatic syndrome or whatever it's called that Picard had. That was rebooted. Data dead, rebooted. Q dead, rebooted. Um, oh, and there were a couple of little lines there. I can't remember now that they would say that would make you go, "Oh, well, that's a little, stab in the back of the writers from season one and two." Definitely was, but yeah, I mean, more Borg. And it wasn't even like Picard's Borg. That's the other thing. I mean, they put the Queen in there from the movie, which kind of connected it a little bit more. But it was like a Voyager storyline. That I kind of agree with Steve Shives because it's hardcore a Voyager storyline because Janeway, she did that whole thing where she traveled back in time, whatever, and infected the Borg continuum with a virus. And this Borg cube was very dilapidated, was not working at full potential. The Borg Queen looked a mess. There she is right here. Where is she? Where's my Borg Queen? There she is. She looked a mess, but it wasn't. I didn't connect with it. I'm like, this isn't even Picard's Borg. It's Voyager's Borg. And what about the best villain that you had on this series, which was Vedic? He just killed her, and I just didn't like the last two episodes. What I did love is the Enterprise D, and of course, it's gonna make me feel something. I did. It's fucking amazing to see the Enterprise D. It was fucking amazing to see the entire cast there. There's beauty. Good Lord, that's a beautiful ship. There's before and after. Okay, with the characters there on the bridge of the Enterprise D. But I didn't connect to it. I didn't connect to what was going on. And the big story. The mystery is that okay, Jack is connected to the Borg. Picard goes into the cube, goes into the mindscape scenes. I hate these mindscape scenes. I skipped talking about the one with Data and Lore, which was cute. It went on a little bit too long, where Lore and Data are fighting for dominance inside of their positronic brain. Man, any scene like that, if you've been watching my videos at all ever, you know that I don't like any of the dream sequence, or when people are dead and they're fighting to when we did the X-Files reviews, there's an episode like that with Dana Scully where she gets abducted by aliens, and then they find her, and then she's fighting to stay alive, and then there's this boat and this cord or this rope that she's pulling or not pulling. I'm like, it's boring. I don't mind a good dream sequence. I'm a big fan of David Lynch, and so is David Chase. So there's a whole lot of dream sequencing going on in The Sopranos, and I love it. But it's like stuff that, at least it moves, and it moves the story forward. But a lot of times these dream sequences are like a dream pacing. It's just boring. It's boring. Unless you're David Lynch and your whole movie is like a whole dream sequence, and you just, he just does amazing stuff with that, which isn't the case here. Anyway, yeah, so Picard goes into Jack's brain and saves him, with the power of fatherly love, whatever, But the whole plan was to assimilate all of Starfleet, and they did. It was like everybody under 25, which people have been making fun of as like, oh, okay, this is just a funny way to, or a smart way to not have the older characters be assimilated. But there was a pseudoscience explanation for it, that I thought was reasonable, which they said, the brain is still developing up to 25 or 26 years of age. So these people would be more amenable to being Borgified in this weird whatever, whatever the hell they did. I still don't quite get how they. Well, yeah, apparently the Borg DNA was passed through transporters, which then Crusher finds a way to remove it. Whatever. Okay. Um, but the series ends fine. The Titan gets re-christened as the Enterprise G, which is nice. Everybody seems to be happy. Jack Crusher's in Starfleet now. He gets a visit from Q. Seven of Nine is a captain now, which, well, she was first, she was the first officer, so it makes sense. Some people have been complaining that, hey, it's too quick to give her like the flagship of Starfleet and captain all in one shot, but it makes sense to me only because she was Shaw's first officer, and if Shaw had died at any, even without all this extra stuff happening, hey, she would have become the captain of that ship. So, and it showed, I think, in season 2 that she was already kind of in Starfleet. Uh, and so it's not like they just gave her a job out of nowhere. And yeah, guys, so that's my episode by episode, more or less. We had the Next Generation, which I give a strong 9. Disengage, 17 seconds, up to no win scenarios, I give it a 10. Pretty much. Imposters, the Bounty, Dominion. These are all strong 8s to 9s, this middle section here. Probably with the episode with Roll Aaron being one that I really liked, but also where they go into the Daystrom station. But then when Vatic gets on the ship, episode 7 and 8, I give it like a 7.58. Way too much posturing. And then they kill Vatic off, and I'm like, why? It just came out of nowhere, but not in a good way. And Star Trek, you're killing off your good characters, because then Shaw gets killed in the next episode. I was like, oh my God, really? And he was a fan favorite. I think he was one of the ones that really, really, really stood out in the series. So those are my thoughts about, episode to episode, more or less. The season as a whole, head and shoulders above season 1 and 2, without a doubt. Although before making this video, I was rewatching, just to get back in the rhythm. I haven't done these lives in a long time. And even just to see how I felt about season 1. And I was kind of gushing about season 1, which surprised me. So I may have to go back and watch season 1, because I was surprised by how much I really enjoyed up to around episode 5 or 6. I think episode Nepenthe, where they meet Riker and Troy. I was still with it, but I was already saying, yeah, the Borg stuff's kind of not making much sense, guys. It's kind of meandering. And then the end was just like a mess. Season 2, forget about it. Boom. That's the worst of the 3 seasons, although it did have some good moments. But this, I give this a strong 8, guys. I mean, it was a pretty solid season. If we were to ask for that final, farewell to our TNG cast, way better than Nemesis. Although I'll tell you what, I think Nemesis has aged well. Okay, it's not the worst movie, the worst Star Trek movie out there. I talk about this a lot on the channel. Is that sometimes we can let our expectations really paint our opinions, and which is totally understandable and totally human, to do. So I think because of things that people wanted from Star Trek Nemesis, which is Romulans an actual Romulan storyline. Well, there's Romulan War, which we'll never get. That was supposed to be Enterprise season 5. Give us these Romulans, but instead we got Remus, and we got a weird Tom Hardy, Picard, and we got Data dying, and we got none of the characters doing anything really important. I can't remember anything that Beverly Crusher did. In Star Trek Nemesis, I'm sure she did something. We got Troy got raped again, mentally raped, psychically raped, which sucked. Although she does have that badass scene where she's touching the panel and finding the guy, and that did it to her. So, and also somebody else mentioned this, and I gotta admit, I'd never really noticed it, which is the fact that LaForge and Data were like the really, really buddy, good friends in TNG. Of course, Picard was too. I mean, he had a very strong relationship with Data. But in the movies, it became really the Data and Picard show, and LaForge was kind of sidelined a little bit, or their relationship was sidelined. So I'm glad that this season rectified that, and it really gave these two their moment. So I can't complain. I can't complain as far as that goes. As far as giving each of these characters a happy ending, maybe I could have gone with Picard dying at the end. I think it would have been a noble way to go, But they went for everybody gets a happy ending, and I'm cool with that too, except for Shaw. He does not get a happy ending, and I think he really deserved it. So those are my thoughts on the season. The special effects were good. I mean, like I said, he didn't have a big budget, but the sets looked wonderful. A little bit dark, but I don't want to talk about negatives yet. Also, the characterizations were great. I'm glad that they gave the female characters stuff to do. Gates McFadden has gone on record on us saying how little there was for Beverly Crusher to do, how she couldn't get good storylines, and how there was a lot of sexism behind the scenes, as far as even the fact that she was the only cast member who had directed before. She was never asked to direct an episode. Same thing with Deanna Troy. Got a little bit better towards the end of the series when they got her out of the cat suit. But, either she's being impregnated by some alien, or I feel, what would she always say? I feel dread. I feel loneliness. Like stuff that doesn't help at all. In this season, she was valuable. She used her empath skills, her empath abilities to find Riker and Jack and Picard on the Borg cube, and be able to transport them back. Was Worf there? Yeah, Worf was there too. Yeah, because today was a good day to die, but not really. So it was kind of a reboot of the scene from Nemesis, except that from a place of power and not one of like I just been psychically raped. And it wasn't the first time she was psychically raped, which really sucks. And Marina Sirtis has talked about this, and she really hates this, that they did this to her character. And so yes, as far as that goes, really, really, really a great send off to this cast. It washes away some of those bad feelings. Even managed to wash away a little bit of the bad feelings I have about Star Trek Generations, because I hate the fact that they killed Captain Kirk. There was no need to kill him. And if you want to watch videos on that, there's a bunch on my channel of how they could have saved Mr. James Tiberius Kirk. Actually, it's on the Star Trek movie rankings, which I'm going to re-upload shortly, and we talk about Generations. And every time I do a rewatch, Generations goes lower and lower and lower and lower on my ranking, which really sucks. But terrible way for Captain Kirk to die. So I'm glad that it gave us a little bit of hope. It'd be great if we could get William Shatner one last time. But I don't think Star Trek is going to do that because, well, they didn't even greenlight the Star Trek Legacy series with a lot of the characters from this show. And people want it. I just saw a YouTuber yesterday that said that the online campaign is up to 46 1,000 votes. In the one for Strange New Worlds, only went up to 30,000. People are clamoring for it. If they, if the Paramount people were smart, that's the show that they would be doing, and not the Starfleet Academy show. I don't think anybody really wants to see Starfleet Academy. I mean, I guess it's going to be cool for the tweens. I'll check it out, but I don't think it's going to be up my. It's going to be my cup of Earl Grey tea. Let's put it that way. And whereas the Legacy series for sure would be, and I think many fans agree that would be the show that would just rock it. If they kept the same writing team and the same style, I think it would be really cool. Negatives. Well, my main negative is, why bring in the changelings? Why bring in Vadic? I don't think the connection between Vadic and the Borg were explained well enough. I think the changelings were kind of brushed off to the side as soon as the Borg came, because the changelings were a big part of this conspiracy, even to the point where, we got the girl there, Admiral, what's her name? She was in Best of Both Worlds. Admiral something or other, Shelby. She's the one that was kind of putting together Frontier Day and putting all of these ships together. And somebody called her out and said, "It's very Borg of you." So even that was like, wait, how many people in the higher echelons of Starfleet were doing this whole Frontier Day thing? Was she a changeling? Because she was so gung-ho about it, and she's so anti-Borg. The fact that she would do that, and they had that technology that connected all of the ships. And so if one ship did something, everybody would do something. So Starfleet was kind of, in a weird way, was its own collective. How deep was the changeling manipulation in all of this? Similar to how the changelings would operate in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, with a lot of manipulation, and it would take just one or two of them to create havoc on a planet and a planet's government. So why bring in the changelings and then not go in all the way? I think it takes away from Vadic's character. I think it takes away from the first 8 episodes, I guess, up to the point where Vadic dies. I think it takes away from a lot of this, all the mysteries, including this portal device, which is fucking awesome. And they destroy her ship after they beat her. They destroy, why would you destroy the ship? It's got technology that is amazing, that, whether you use it or not, they could do we don't use the cloaking device, because it's more honorable for Starfleet to not use it. Well, I mean, you could have be nice to just have the technology to be able to study it, even though I think Starfleet is the one that created it. So the changelings stole that from Daystrom too. So that part for me was the sour point of this season. That you gave us a great villain, you gave us this connection with one of Deep Space Nine's greatest villains, but updated. And I like how they kind of changed the story a little bit. These aren't the same changelings from Deep Space Nine, but it just stopped abruptly. Vadic dying, I was like, is this really happening? I almost thought that when she was out in space and getting frozen, she would somehow reconnect or something, or we would see a little smile. No, she's dead, and then we just move on to the Borg for the last 2 episodes. It's almost like that's a different series. It's this is Star Trek Picard season 4, or the last movie, Star Trek The Borg, the final adventure. So I wasn't very happy with that. I wasn't happy that they didn't give us information that we kind of needed, that they made a big deal about, her cutting off her hand and his face talking to her. People say that that's the Borg Queen, but there's no confirmation of it, not that I've seen. And I would have liked to seen some Deep Space Nine call-outs. You bring in Deep Space Nine's greatest villain, and you can't give me just one Deep Space Nine character, and you gave us 7 of 9 is from Voyager. You gave us Tuvok from Voyager. You gave us the Borg from Voyager. You name dropped Janeway a bunch of times. Uh, what about Deep Space Nine? Right? What about Bashir coming in because he's a specialist in these things, in changeling anatomy? Would have been cool. It would have been really cool to have seen a little bit of that. I mean, the most amazing thing would have been if Cisco came back. But that's wishful thinking. Hopefully we can see Cisco one more time. But I really need these guys in Paramount. I know Lower Decks did a Deep Space Nine thing with Kira. Kira was on there. I haven't seen it yet because I'm not like a huge Lower Decks fan. I like the series, but it's not like I need to watch it now. So eventually I get around to it. I do need to see how Captain Freeman got out of the jam from the end of season 2. So I do need to watch it. But yeah, not a lot of love for my Deep Space Nine, and I think that there should be more. So that's really my negative, and that's really my only negative is that, in the fact that he gave us two really strong villains, but the second strong villain didn't feel that strong because it felt shoehorned in at the end, and it was like, here's the real bad guy, and let's just forget 8 episodes. Like, they didn't work that hard to make these connections. Yeah, they find out a way to identify who's a changeling or not. I think they have a throwaway line where Crusher figures this shit out. I mean, they do like a 1-year time jump. So that's my real negative, is that. I don't think I have any more to say about that. So we're reaching the 1 hour mark. So let's go. Let's see. Let me go through my slideshow again. Yeah, there's a face that we don't know what the hell that is. Oh, Shaw. Okay. So let's get into characters. Characters that how I felt about them. I didn't like Shaw at first, but he grew on me like he grew on everybody. Shame that they killed him off. If they do end up doing a Star Trek Legacy series, maybe he can come back as a hologram or something. Get this guy back somehow, some way. I wish they would have left a little opening there, because they didn't even show him getting stowed away, buried, or anything. But then in this next episode, it was like a little hologram of him kind of recommending Seven of Nine, who he called by her actual name, to a Starfleet position, captain someday, a command position. But what a loss of a really cool character, and much more charismatic, even though he's an asshole, than Seven. I'm not a huge Seven of Nine fan. I wasn't. When I rewatched Voyager, I didn't like the first 2 seasons, got into it about midway through the third. And just as I'm getting into it because Janeway is, she let her hair down. She got rid of that bun and she was like badass and nutty. And I'm like, oh my God, Janeway is insane. And then Seven of Nine came in and it became the Seven of Nine show. And I totally understand Kate Mulgrew, her and what's her name that plays Seven of Nine, had some issues because she felt like the show was just using Jerry Ryan as this sex bot, just to get these horny boys, teenage boys to watch the show, and taking away from like strong female lead, which is Captain Janeway. And I agree. I never really liked Seven of Nine. And I don't even like the way she says it's futile, because the other Borg say it's futile. And she says it's futile. I don't know. Anyway, that's just me. I like her a little bit better in Star Trek Picard. I liked her a lot better this season. But I don't know if I'd watch a show where she was captain. I don't know if she would interest me that much. I would have to watch it to see. But, she's not the most charismatic character for me. I know I'm in a minority because she's a huge fan favorite. It's just not. But her arc was okay. Other characters, till we get to the, before we get to the main cast, Rafi was just there, but and I really like Rafi. And I was listening back to my season 1 thoughts, and I was giving her a lot of praise. I know there's a lot of Rafi haters there, but if she's got good, interesting stuff to do, she's really cool as a character. And I think it's why they kept her. Metalis and company, they saw that. and they got rid of all the other characters and like, oh no, she's sticking around. Because they could have very easily written her off because they they just did that with a bunch of stuff in this season. Stuff that came before. Who else? Oh, of course, Jack Crusher. I already talked about the bridge crew. Wonderful. The LaForge daughters. Wonderful. Jack Crusher, very charismatic. I would be willing to see more of him moving forward. Really great character. Um, Again, kind of stupid. The end. Didn't like it. How the hell was the Borg ship hiding around Jupiter for that long and nobody noticed it? That's another thing that's kind of weird. Whatever. But as far as him, the actor, uh, 90% of what he had to do this season, I dug and I thought was cool. And I would like to see more of Jack Crusher. I love the Titan. Beautiful ship. Again, this is such a cool scene, And then it was just like, yeah, let's just forget about this mess and let's destroy the ship with the technology that did it. Smart. End of the Nebula stuff. Great character moment for Riker getting out of his dark slump. And call back to Farpoint, with the space jellyfish, whatever. Very cute. Dug it. Of course, here, member berries galore, with all the ships in the Starfleet Museum. There's Daystrom, where inside you have a bunch of Easter eggs, from the Tribbles. We have a Genesis 2 device, which maybe can bring Kirk back, and there's Kirk's body there. We have Moriarty, which, again, kind of needless. I wish they would have done a little bit more with Moriarty or just not have him in the series because it didn't really add much. I mean, I guess that was supposed to be Data's memories. So I guess he used Moriarty as the security guard, but I wasn't impressed by it. Vadic gets frozen out. Fucking solids. Low point of the season for me. Borg Queen, I thought, was really anticlimactic. Didn't do much. She was weak. She was vengeful. It was like she felt like a regular villain. It didn't feel like the Borg. And, I really didn't dig it. Did not dig the Borg. At the end, I did dig my Enterprise D, though. I'm all about the D. And let's get to the main cast and then close this out. Please like and subscribe. We will be back with some Deep Space Nine reviews hopefully soon. Hopefully this week. Who knows? But maybe it'll be next week. Usually on a Wednesday night around 10 p.m. Brazil time. And I think we're about an hour or two ahead of New York time. So if you just so you get an idea. And if you can't watch live, watch the replay. But here we go. We have our main cast. Let's start with Worf, all the way in the back there. Like I said, I wasn't keen on Worf being the laughingstock or the comic relief because it just was too much. I mean, he's a serious character. And yes, there are moments where you can find humor in Worf, but not all the time. I wanted to see more badass Worf, which we did have in the beginning when he was kind of, with Rafi and going rogue and just chopping off heads. But I would have preferred not so much joking, especially at the end where they had that scene where he fell asleep on the bridge, because he got to sit down for once. So I get it. It's a nice little meta joke, but I feel it's not in character for Worf to sit, which is going to it's going to let me piggyback right into Troy, because Troy had a scene like that towards the end. She only showed up for the very last bit of the season, but she got some love in season 1, so there you go. But I didn't like that, at the very end where they're doing like the various endings, she is, she is being Data's therapist, and she's like planning her vacation. I think that takes away from the character. There's a lot of complaint about this in Star Trek 5. It's like they saw that Star Trek 4 worked with the comedy, so let's do more of it in Star Trek 5. The difference is that in Star Trek 4, you have these very well equipped and prepared Starfleet officers who are in a environment that they don't know how to handle all the time, because it's different. But they're very, it doesn't take anything away from them. They're still just as efficient. They're still just as amazing. They just, they're talking to the mouse. Mouse, where's my mouse? Um, will you please, mouse? Do whatever. Scotty trying to type on the keyboard. How does he do stuff like that? Um, it is funny, but it's not at the expense of the characters. Whereas in the second movie, well, I shouldn't say the second movie, the following movie, Star Trek Five, it seems like the comedy was at the expense of the characters. When you have Scotty hitting his head on the Enterprise, like you don't know, like that's just stupid. Like that would never happen. That he would hit his head because he doesn't know where he is inside of the Enterprise. It wasn't just a little. I could even deal with that. Like, ooh, ooh, excuse me. Ooh, we gotta get fix some of these low ceilings or something. But actually to the point where he gets knocked out. No, come on. Um, so I don't like humor like that. That takes away the integrity of the character. I don't think Worf would ever fall asleep on the bridge of the Enterprise, and I don't think Troy would take any of her patients lightly and be half paying attention. I mean, maybe you guys correct me if I'm wrong. If they did that with her character at some point in the series, I don't remember, but maybe they did. And if they did, reasons why Troy it was one of the worst written characters in the series in Star Trek: The Next Generation. Anyway, but it was good to see her, and it was good to see her actually do stuff that helped get get us to point B. LaForge all the way back there in the upper picture, but driving in the first. Um, I dug LaForge, a lot of emotional moments. We got him doing some engineering stuff. It was nice. I like that he connected with Data. They had their moment. But I know a lot of people love those scenes. I felt it was like trying too hard to be emotional. That's just me. I mean, I love Jordy LaForge. I love LeVar Burton as an actor, as a person. But it just felt like it was trying too hard to hit those emotional booms. There's a lot of really good emotional scenes in Star Trek Picard. One of the best scenes is Picard and Beverly just looking at each other, and it says everything. So Picard and Roll Aaron, uh, Riker and Troy, they didn't have to say much, and we got it. With the LaForge stuff, it just felt like it was piling on, and it was just really trying really hard to let us know how much this relationship meant. Whatever, that's just me. Yeah, maybe I'm just not the emotional type. Let's see, where are we? Beverly Crusher just mentioned. Oh, let's get to Data first. Let's get to Data. He's back again. Good for him. Brent Spiner has been in every season of Star Trek Picard, playing some version of himself or his ancestors. I'm glad. Oh, excuse me, guys. I'm glad that he can actually be. Well, maybe he still is a version of himself. Whatever. I'm just glad Data's there. He's happy. Uh, you know, his big scene was the one with him and Lord. Good stuff. Kind of bored me after a while because it was kind of predictable where it was going to go. Kind of yes and no. I mean, you knew Data was going to come back. Uh, I just didn't catch on to I'm giving you all my memories so that now I am you. You are me because you have all my good memories. That was kind of cute, but didn't impress me. Like it wasn't like, wow. Okay. I really liked Data from season 1 of Picard. I thought that was a good closure for the character. I really liked that version of Data. This version, it's okay. It's okay. But I love Brent Spiner, so as long as he's there, I'm happy. And as long as everybody's there, I'm happy. So I'm glad that they managed to bring him back in a way that made sense. And let's get to Crusher. I kind of I disagreed with her reasonings for keeping Jack Crusher away, but at the same time, I got it. They did have to kind of fill in that hole, that 20-year gap, however long it was that she was away from everybody. She had a lot to do this season, which I think is cool. She was really, really, really at the forefront of figuring out this mystery. So props to her. And she was awesome. She just slipped back into the role really well. I'm really glad to see Dr. Crusher. And then we have Riker, which I've never been a huge Riker fan. it, by the way, it seems like I really don't like TNG. I really love TNG. I'm just more of a TOS guy. And then as far as characters, Deep Space Nine, as far as evolution of characters. But he was okay. He had a lot of good moments with Picard, a lot of good moments between him and Troy. I liked when he went badass a couple times, and I could actually see him carrying a show, which I could never see before. Does he charismatic enough to be able to carry a Star Trek show as the captain? Yeah, I saw it. I saw it here. I thought it was a little bit forced how pissed off he got at Picard in the beginning, but then let bygones be bygones by the next episode. Cool. But, he was going through stuff. And it took a little bit of space jellyfish to get him out of the slump. Whatever. It's Star Trek. And we get to the main course, Picard. Patrick Stewart, finally, because the first two seasons, it felt like he was on his deathbed. His voice was all good, and he's talking a little bit like this with his British accent and gimping along. And I'm like, man, this feels like just watching like a retirement home video or something. I don't know. In here, you could feel his voice, like it just he was back. It was Captain Picard, and it's so funny that I don't think season 1 and 2 were made with bad intentions. I think they were very, very good intentions in trying to make season 1 and 2. And I understand that a lot of it came from Patrick Stewart himself because he wanted to explore this Picard character. Because unfortunately, as great as TNG was, it was a '90s show, and in the '90s, you have caricatures. The TV just wasn't built in the way that it is now, where one thing leads to another that leads to another. The X-Files kind of began that, Twin Peaks before that. But even the X-Files would have its reset button, even though there was the long mythology that was going on behind the scenes. Star Trek Deep Space Nine, of course, just threw all that stuff out the window and said, we're going to build on our characters. And Cisco is not the same guy he was at the end of the series as he is at the beginning, and neither are any of these characters. That's amazing. TNG was not on that level. TNG was reset button, we're back. Reset button. We got tortured last week, reset button, we're back. Ship almost blew up last week, reset button, we're back. So I get Patrick Stewart's complaints, just like, Gates McFadden complaints and Marina Sirtis complaints. And one thing that he actually complained about is why Captain Picard could never have a love life. He thought it was kind of dumb. There's an interview where he talks about this. So I get that this is him actually wanting to explore this character, but from a different angle. Seasons 1 and 2, which is, who is this man? What are some of the traumas that he has? Why is he so stoic? Why doesn't he why does he not want to connect to people? Or why can't he connect to people? I just thought how they went about it answering these questions was a little bit stupid. Sorry. And they more or less did the same thing here, but much better, where it showed where he was, what he was, everything. It was much better. But Star Trek, I'm sorry, lost my train of thought. My neighbors are making noise. But in this season, we got Patrick Stewart, we got Captain Picard, I should say. I just think it's funny because I think there was good intentions. That's the point I was trying to get to. There were very good intentions behind Star Trek Picard seasons 1 and 2. which were really the Patrick Stewart trying to deal with his own demons, and doing it through Captain Picard, but it just wasn't that well made. And whereas here, it's like we gave the fans what they wanted. So it's kind of funny because I wonder how he feels about that. We just left to like sit with Patrick Stewart, because nobody's gonna ask him that in an interview because it's gonna be in such bad taste. But like, man, you were the guy that was pushing for this, and this, and then we did this, which you definitely did not want, because you were on the this is not TNG reunion tour for the first two seasons, and we've got the TNG reunion tour, and everybody loved it. So that's a good lesson, guys, in just giving the fans what they want sometimes. Do I love change? I love it. Do I love, actually, not some, but a lot of the things New Trek does, as far as having more space for character development, having more space for these consequences to actions? Yes. And you can see a lot of that stuff in Star Trek Picard Season 3, But um, also, just give the fans what the fuck they want. They want to see some D. They want to see some Enterprise D. They want to see our beloved cast back together again. And it works. It works. It works. It works, despite what I felt was a lackluster season ending. But, how many Star Trek has not had a good track record of ending their series. So I'll take it. I'll take it. So yes, hurrah, hurrah for Patrick Picard. Even though, man, he just left Laris, that Romulan bitch he was with. It's like, yeah, we just forgot she existed. So he's a player out in space. Good for him. But I would have loved to have at least a little bit of a closure scene between him and Laris, or maybe even in the beginning, him saying, "Look, this mission I think is really going to be really serious. I don't know if I'm coming back. I don't know if this is going to work for us. I think it's best you go back to Romulus." Oh no, Romulus doesn't exist anymore. It's just not gonna work. Or just a call, and her saying, I knew, you know, space is where your heart is. Be well, Picard. And it would be like, I don't know. He would just say, yes, thank you, and then something. But she was an interesting character, not my favorite character, but an interesting character. But why bring her back at the beginning of the season if you're just going to forget about her? Why bring in Vatic and then kill her off? Why bring in the Changelings and then just forget they existed for the first two episodes? So, Metalis, he did a great job writing this season, but some things were like, come on, dude. And I think that's it, guys. That's it. I'm glad the show is over. I had fun with it. I would recommend, if you're a Star Trek fan, old school, new school, watch the season. I think you're going to love it. I think you're really going to enjoy it. And you don't have to watch the first two seasons of Star Trek Picard to enjoy this season. That doesn't mean that there aren't some good things in those seasons. I think in season one, a little bit more than season two, but there are some interesting character moments in, I'm trying to think, in season two, interesting character moments. I mean, I like that Q was in there, but even Q, they kind of like toned down. Everything was like toned down. Oh, it's like, it's Q. You're going to like make him all pussyfied. And Metalis is like, no, Q is very much alive. And he's here. So that's it. That's it. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I am off the bed, guys. I love you. Keep tracking.